we've got such a wildfire problem in the US and around the world. People are trying to find solutions that scale to work on prevention stuff. That's how I came into working with AI. And the more I learn about it, the more I want to democratize it. And that's led to me doing some teaching at the local community college and forming a free group here in Northern Arizona. AI is something that we tend to fear it individually, but the solution is not really individual. It's really about getting people together and working together to learn and grow.
Welcome to the Mindform Podcast, where we delve into the minds of some of the most interesting people on the planet, discuss psychology, philosophy, and personal growth, and share the wisdom we uncover with you. Join us as we explore the art of forming our minds. Here's your host, Frank Lawton.
Kia ora from New Zealand. Welcome to another episode of the Mindform Podcast, an extension of the Mindform collective and training platform. This podcast is similarly a space dedicated to exploring and altering psychological landscapes together. So in each weekly episode, I talk to a new guest, usually members of Mindform, to extract wisdom, refine ideas, and collaborate on the game of architecting our minds. So this week's guest is Ariel Strong, connecting in from Arizona. She is a founding member of Mindform and a deeply valued member at that as well. She's been on the podcast once before. It was actually the first one that we recorded, although not the first one we posted, and we discussed her path in finding and sort of courageously following callings. Taking brave steps out and trying to, based on your interests and the things that come in your life, but build something, a life, decisions, a pathway that is meaningful. And her unique calling involves an intersection of AI and environment, or like human environment relationships. She uses AI to manage and help people prepare for and collect data on wildfires. I assume is that all local, by the way? Is that all in your state, or does it do you grow across borders with what you look at there?
I'm still local,
Oh, cool.
looking to expand here before too long.
So Ariel has gone really deep into using AI as a tool in this space, and through that has kind of had an expanding relationship with, well, relationship maybe not be the right word. There's a lot of implications for that in that context, but she uses AI a lot, and she's learned a lot, and she has a lot of wisdom. And in our community, she sort of brings the wisdom on that particular topic, and we all really value for that. In fact, we've even had a few of our people go and do a bit of a training with her. So Ariel also runs a space called Human Nature on Mindform, where we talk about the relationship between ourselves and our natural environment and what that means for our psychotecture, our personal development, and what it means for our lives as a whole. We're going to talk about all of these things and how they come together in this episode. What are we? What does it mean? What does AI tell us about who we are? What does our environment tell us about who we are? And what are we doing in the world today with all of this stuff? So I'm really, really excited to talk about this, because I think, Ariel's just had a lot of valuable stuff to say. So before the intro, we were just kind of going on a semi-emotional rant and holler about AI and, oh my gosh, what's going on? The world's so crazy. And we were just talking a little bit about kind of the capabilities of AI at this very moment, and what are the implications? How are we currently responding to what AI can do, and what does that mean about where we're going? Maybe to jump in, you could just elaborate a little bit more on the specifics of the work you do with AI at the moment. Maybe you could just give us the rundown on some of that, Ariel.
Yeah, because it's changed some since we last talked. And thanks for having me on. Been looking forward to this conversation because I've been learning a lot, and some of my views are changing as well as I learn more. Um, in my day-to-day work, I do wildfire risk management and risk assessments, mitigation planning, that sort of thing. I'm a certified wildfire mitigation specialist. So it's all about trying to make communities more resilient. And we've got such a wildfire problem in the US and around the world for that matter, that people are trying to find solutions that scale to work on prevention stuff. And that's where my drone work and my AI stuff comes in, because it lets me do more faster,
Right.
that kind of thing. And that's how I came into working with AI. And the more I learn about it, the more, as we were talking, I want to democratize it. And that's led to me doing some teaching at the local community college and forming a free group here in northern Arizona, where we get everybody who's interested, any level. We do workshops and training and just get people in the same room talking together, um, and trying to come up with ways to help individuals, businesses get a handle on AI, trying to make it something that's available rather than completely controlled by big tech companies. Everything from, we've got some people who are into development doing open source stuff, to people who are brand new into the group, just came in. We just did a beginners workshop, and just people who'd never used ChatGPT before, for instance. So trying to work across that spectrum and get information into the hands of people that who can use it. And a lot of people are really concerned about what it means to their livelihood. Where are we going in the future? And we had a big discussion at the beginners workshop about security and privacy, and how do you stay safe working with these technologies?
Yeah, I've become a bit. I just use Chat GPT for all sorts of stuff, and that's pretty much the whole of my knowledge, I suppose. Is I know that I can type in chatgpt.com and kind of ask the right questions a little bit to get interesting, useful answers for certain things I'm trying to figure out. I was just traveling with my family, staying and was with my mum, and we were working on a crossword together, and we just couldn't get this last word, and we couldn't figure out kind of the right Google search, to come up with it. And I said, "Oh, look, we'll just go on ChatGPT." And she said, "No, no, I'm not having that on my phone. They're gonna steal all my data. They're gonna, And I don't know, maybe, but I literally just never think about that because it's so convenient, and I think that's part of the power of it, right? Um, I'm curious about, in terms of knowledge with your workshops. I'm thinking there's sort of three kinds of empowering knowledge, right? When it comes to AI, there's knowing how to use the AI resources that are there to get things done. There's knowing how it works and what you're actually using, and then there's knowing a bit about the economics and the politics and the implications and all of that. So do you sort of go at it from all of those angles? Yeah, what's your
I
focus
have
in
to
terms of
kind of
trying to educate
consider
people?
all those angles. Yeah, my focus, well, I've got two different things. I've got, as I've learned more about AI and got more proficient, I've also got software development background. So I'm someone I'm starting to build tools that businesses can use and things like that. Individuals can use custom GPTs, things like that, so that people who don't have the programming background, even though that bar is getting lower as LLMs get better dealing with code, it's starting to put that more into reach of people who are not as technical. But the big thing, the I wanted to empower people on a couple levels. One, just getting comfortable with the technology. Um, educating people about, hey, it's as scary as it can seem. There's a tremendous amount of opportunity. You just have to learn how to use it wisely, ethically, things like that. And how do you do that? Get some tools, a mental toolbox as well to have the mental models to deal with it. And then to start, uh, I think one of the biggest things I hear, uh, besides, oh, AI is going to take my job, that's the big fear. But then once people start getting into it a little bit, they start using it for personal use or business use, they get where they can work with Chat GPT and come up with a good prompt and get some useful stuff happening. Then they start getting scared. It's like, I can't keep up. I hear this all the time because as you start to get your feet wet, then you start learning how many different aspects to it there are and how much it's affecting culture, society, economics, and then kind of what may be out there in the future. And then everyone gets kind of obsessed about, I can't keep up. And one of the things I've been telling my students is this is precisely why we have a free open meetup that's open to anybody, because you're not going to be able to keep up as an individual. There's no way. No one can. It's you need a community of people who are all working in their different areas, but then you get together and you share what's happening, you share what you've learned, you show your latest project. Um, I, I, AI is something that we tend to fear it individually. Like what is its impact going to be on me, say. But the solution is not really individual. It's really about getting people together and working together to learn and grow. The motto of our group is learn, grow, share, have fun. That's the motto, because it's anybody can come in at any level and bring useful insights. It's not limited. Beginner doesn't have to feel like, well, I don't know anything. That's okay. You're bringing in who you are and your wisdom and your background and everything. And
Well, I mean, arguably, that becomes what we have to offer, right? As AI offers everything else, what we have to offer is I'm a human being who has experiences, and when human beings come together and share their experiences, we come up with ways to help our group together. And I mean, that currently is something AI hasn't fully entered. I mean, you say, it's almost like a divide and conquer thing in a way, right? Like individually, you can have a relationship with AI, and there can be a lot of influence there. But when there are 6 people sitting in a room, AI just turns into a tool, right, that they can use. And I find that really interesting. I think there's something being said there, and I'm trying to put my finger on it. I think about I had this kind of book idea once. It's like sort of 10 ways to simultaneously flip off the system, help the collective, and love yourself or something. And one of them, and it's just kind of like small kinds of almost civil disobedience to shifts we can make, and nothing's like, go outside, only buy things you need, just stuff where you're participating a little bit less and giving less of your being to the powers that be, I guess, but also engaging in the parts of the world that are free and joyous. But one of the things that seems so impactful is to just connect with other human beings, and specifically kind of connecting across normal barriers that exist between people. Like one of the things I wrote on that list of ideas was collecting across class barriers, right? Like where somehow it seems like the power structures or whatever, or the influences that are confusing and disorienting to us, that impact our lives and throw us off balance and we don't know where it's going. It seems like that whole power structure or whatever somehow depends on the way that we are isolated, that we have we're in our little class units and we're in our family units and we're alone just engaging on the screen. I don't know why, but it seems like choosing to have conversations with people that you weren't having conversations with before has a lot of power to it and makes it harder to have power over you. But I don't know why that is.
Yeah, and I think I see things happen in the group. The meeting we just had a couple weeks ago, we had a number of the people you'd consider advanced practitioners show up to the beginners group just because they wanted to hear what the beginners' questions would be. Because the beginners are, when you've dealt with a technology like that, you develop blind spots because you're using it every day and you're using it in a very particular way. And it's sort of like the emperor's new clothes, that someone coming in new or with a fresh take on things is going to think differently, ask different questions, and react to what you say differently than someone else who may be operating at where you're amongst. I'm a nerd. I'm a techie, and when I'm relating with other nerds and techies, um, we've got a common language and understanding, and that blinds us to things that someone else coming in fresh is more apt to see. And that's part of the philosophy of this particular group is throw it wide open, ask questions, get in there, and there are no stupid questions. And because so much of this whole field is unknown, and largely it's there are some super smart people who understand how to write the code and work with the technology and stuff, but even they will say they don't really know. They have guesses and plausible scenarios, but we're really dealing with something that is not well understood at all, which interestingly gets into the whole question of consciousness and humanity versus machine and some of the things we were interested in talking about. Because
it has me thinking about, I think, you look at human history, right? We used to, all of our engaging, in a sense, for a long time, has been with most, I suppose, not all, has been with things that we don't really understand, things that are way too big and complex to fully tease apart. But we just have these little surface control panels, engagement points where we can put in our inputs and then these expressions that we can engage with, like farming, like hunting, like foraging, like, so many of the ways that human beings have understood nature. And nature, that's still the reality of nature, right? I mean, like the human organism is just like the most incredibly complex and profound technology. We couldn't, it's so difficult to, there's always more to be understood. Who knows if we'll ever get a full, I don't think a human being could hold all that information, cohese all that information in their heads, but, there's so much there. But we've shifted, and I suppose that's kind of, you could say that's like a right brain, that, if I love talking about this left brain, right brain thing, we're engaging with things where the point is an understanding. It's listening, it's responding, it's adjusting as we go. And as we've taken over the world and with technology and everything, so much more of what we engage with is things that we do understand, that we've made, and they have right angles and not that many moving parts. But we've built, and this is like the first time, really, it seems we've built something that's just as hard to understand, if not harder, than that which built us, or that which was built by forces or beings or whatever. Who knows? Just, a reality beyond us. We've sort of, I guess it's just the sort of novice outshines the master kind of situation, but it's curious that the difference to me seems to be there's a degree of trust in the world as it exists that we didn't create. Well, we've been here for a long time. It's been here for a long time. we're sort of adapted to it. The world as it is today, the natural world came out and us at the same time. We sort of grew together. But this thing has just grown really suddenly, and we're not as, natural selection or God or whatever, we're not as intelligent or slow or patient a designer as those forces. So it's a beast we don't understand, but it's also a beast that's really, really hard to trust, right? This AI.
Yeah, and it's the complexity. There's just a handful of, I mean, really, when you figure the size of the human population, it's a tiny
Very
group of
small.
people that really understand the the picture, the inner workings in detail. And most of them will say that, one of the big problems that's talked about with AI is sort of black box thing. There are things going on that we really can't see into. And that has a lot of implications. And we don't even know exactly how to get to the answers to the questions, or what we find if we really so there's a big push around ethics and um, sort of explainability, for lack of a better term, that to be able to get things to where people can, there'll be specialists, of course, but we'll be able to actually track more of what's happening. And you get into a lot of big questions. You get into competition between nations. You get into all kinds of societal and structural things about, well, we can't take time to do that right now, or we'll be passed up by someone else, or
Yeah.
it. There are a lot of decisions being made uh, behind closed doors that we don't have access
All
to
the
or
decisions are being
influence
made like
over.
that, I think.
Yeah, so that's why I think I'm happy to see more companies putting their code out as open source, where more people, excuse me, where more people can get a look at it. And
Funny, I mean, I'm who knows? I don't understand the politics of it, but interesting that the code's being put out as open source at around the time that it's almost impossible for an individual to look at the code and really grasp the whole thing. Or is it not that difficult when you go down to the
well,
code level?
yes and no. It depends on what you're trying to do, what model you're using, what uh, it gets into the hardware that's used, and how many millions, billions of tensors you've got in there. It's just a lot of it is just mind-boggling in terms of numbers and speed. Uh, I know that's not a direct correlate to explainability, but it is a factor in how fast things are moving. That we've got so much more compute power now, and the race is really on for that. So there's the hardware race, and then there's also the software race, and then there are the social and economic and political structures and thing that this whole thing is playing out within. And then we just got, like you were saying, our just human ability to comprehend and process the magnitude of what's going on.
Yeah, I mean, it's a lot. You talked about kind of the common experience of people who participate in your groups. So it's just so hard to keep up. And I sort of maybe like a lot of people, as it accelerated, I felt like this anxious need, like, oh, I really need to understand this. And I felt like the more I learned, the more distant the the total understanding becomes. And it's just kind of exhausting because it feels like if I don't understand this, I'm sort of powerless, and if I want to hold on the future, I need to understand it. But it's becoming, there's more to, the rate at which there's increasing stuff to learn is faster than my rate of learning could be. So I've just kind of pulled back. I'm just like, I'm just going to pick something else to focus on because this is, it's like it feels to me like an untamable beast, And so I'll just focus on human relationships and seeing if I can offer value in a way that people would like humans to keep doing.
Yeah, it's a really interesting question because I think we're all feeling that because AI is already as smart as a lot of us, and it's coming for everyone else as well. However you measure intelligence. We know that we're not going to be able, it's already faster than we are, could do a lot of things that most of us don't have the capacity for. I mean, our brains aren't built to process as quickly and um yeah, it's almost like we need to get comfortable with what that means and then work together on the human side to build structures and make connections between humans to have to figure out how to live alongside this thing we've created and the impacts that it's going to have. And it's in a way we almost have to outsource some of our ability to manage and control things. And as she said, can we even trust it? That's a big question. And then can we trust the gatekeepers
That's the
to the
that's the big
technology?
question.
How do we build structures that are good for the world as a whole and are equitable and things like that, given the way we've already set up our various economic and social structures? I see that as one of the biggest challenges. And there's a big range amongst the different companies that are using AI and as to how they're approaching that. And are they making code available? How open are they? How trustworthy are they? Um, how can we know how trustworthy they are or are not? Lots of big questions because what we're left with, I think we have to at some point say intellectually, uh, just raw thinking power. We're already, as humans, being um, outdone.
Oh
It's
yeah,
it's
I mean by
already
by
happening.
a certain
It's just a given.
interpretation, if you're saying raw thinking power of that, I mean we're outpaced 100-fold, 1,000-fold, yeah, as an individual.
Yeah. And the reason we feel so stressed about keeping up is we feel that. And it's very uncomfortable
It's very
to admit
strange.
that,
When have we felt that before?
one sort of simple analogy is, how many of us really understand how an internal combustion engine in your car works? And could you go out there and fix that? Most of us would say no. We don't know enough. We don't have the tools. Now, yes, we could learn it, but I'm just using it like an example of most of us are not able to have that ability. If we're stuck out alongside the road with the toolbox, would we be able to get ourselves back in the car running again? Most of us not. Now, we'll hop on our cell phone and call the tow truck driver or something, but that's where we're getting. I mean, it's just kind of a weird little analogy to like where we are with AI right now. And this is the least smart AI is ever going to be, at this moment that where we're going to experience.
I've heard that phrasing
right now
before, and it's always such a slap. It's like, but anyway, yeah, it's true.
But it's our reality, and we humans don't like
reality.
We don't like that, but yet we've created it.
Well,
It's our monster,
amazing.
right?
It's amazing the things. I mean, it's a Cold War, isn't it? It's the Cold War. It's the arms race. It's amazing the things that the corners we'll paint ourselves into, because we can't stop, because we really have to know, or because, whatever it is. But, these sort of micro forces put us, these individuals who are developing AI and not making laws around it, or, the decision makers, the power holders in this space, micro factors are making them go, 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 go. And then there's this sort of negligence to the macro thing of, we're making this every single time we do that, we're making it harder for ourselves every single time. And it's almost like a narrowing of options. It seems like it. I'm just looking at these two books. I've been getting into science fiction recently. Dune and Foundation, Isaac Asimov, one of his iconic books. But they're both set, distant in human future, and humans have some kind of interstellar civilization and, all of that stuff. But both of them rely, to be able to world build, that both of them rely on, there was the robot wars, and now it's like illegal to have thinking machines because they just couldn't come up. It was too hard to design a world with that stuff loose.
Well, it really throws into sharp relief. I mean, when you start listening to interviews with some of the creators or the people who are driving the process of innovation, even if they're not the ones actively writing the software, they're often the ones who are the most resistant to any sort of regulation, any sort of curbs or standards that need to be met.
And why is that?
Some of the people, well, it's a business motive, it's a profit motive. The people that are writing the AI and who really understand under the hood what's going on tend, at least from what I'm seeing, tend to be more cautious and want to do more research into how do we do this ethically, how well do we understand what we're doing, where do we need to go into more depth. So it really all comes back to us as humans. Yes, it's our tool, but we've got something that, the horse has kind of been let out of the barn. How are you going to catch it?
How, we're the decision makers here. I mean, not me, but these people. We're the decision makers here, and so often there's this thing of, well, it's kind of like it's the prisoner's dilemma, right? It's just game theory. It's like we can't stop ourselves from playing these finite games, even though the vast majority of participants who are doing the thing that is terrifying them are saying, hey, we should all stop doing this thing. But these guys, they're going to work every day, and they're digging the hole deeper. They're painting it into the corner. They're loosening the reins on the beast every day, despite that feeling. And it's sometimes it can, and maybe this is the power of just having conversations, right? Because it's that isolation, right? It's like, well, this is my job, and I got a job to do, and I got to go to work, and what am I going to do if I don't do this, or whatever it is that kind of leads these people to go to work and do the same thing every day despite their fears. But maybe that's the power of having conversations. I mean, the prisoner's dilemma is an example, where maybe just for the audience, I'll very briefly explain it. So there's two prisoners, and they get taken into private rooms, and the detective says to each of them, "Oh, look, if you dob your friend in, and they don't dob you in, then you're free to go," and they get a rough sentence. If you both dob each other in, you're both screwed, worst case scenario. And if neither of you dob, well, that if neither of you dob each other in, you're all good. Dob each other in, make the other person say they're guilty. Tell them that the other person's guilty. But, you can't trust the other person. You don't know. You can't have a conversation with your friend in the other room and say, "Hey, you're not going to dob me in. Hey, like we're good. We're not going to because best case scenario, neither of us says anything. Maybe your friend's going to say something, so you need to. And that's maybe that speaks to the power of having conversations and going to groups like this. That there's that destructive power of isolation that can lead us to that can lead the collective sum of our individual actions to be against what we each individually and all collectively actually want.
Yeah, and I think a lot of it comes back to the human factors of, you know, um, economic gain, political gain, power in one form or another. So if you're country A and you're looking across the ocean at country B, and you're going, wow, they've made some
It's okay, you can name
advances.
the countries.
They're catching up. Yeah, okay. But I mean, the
Yeah.
principle applies no matter what. You're going to make different decisions than if you have built relationships, have, if not trust in one another, at least built up forms of monitoring and, maybe at least come to some understanding that there are outcomes that neither side wants. And you put some sort of form in place. So, like some of the monitoring systems that did work with nuclear weapons, AI, it could very well be an existential threat to humanity. I mean, there are a number of scenarios where that could happen. It would be far better to have agreements and things in place that could allow us to have an exit strategy of some sort, or a switch you
big
could
bomb
turn
is
off.
much easier to understand, though, isn't it? I think it's a clearer, it's easier to see. Okay,
So
either we all blow up or we don't. All right, but you don't know.
So we didn't succeed in the first effort. Now we've got an even more threat, or potentially less understandable threat. So it is, we keep, as you said, I like that, painting ourselves into corners where, a little bit of thought or foresight, or even just understanding history better, and taking lessons of history, and go, we really are not good at, as a species, even though, Homo sapiens, we think of ourselves as wise, but we sure underestimate some things, or don't apply some of the things.
Well, we're very we're the best at it. We're the best species we know of at it. And we're so good at it that we can comprehend how bad at it compared to how good we could be. How bad at it we are. So, yeah.
Well, we like to think that. Maybe I sometimes think, the whales maybe are smarter than we realize. They just don't don't.
Yeah. Well, who knows? Maybe that's yeah, for real. Maybe there's
I mean,
one of the possible futures is that we stupidify ourselves, so we stop being so smart to make such terrible decisions, and then there's a smart species, and we act like whales to them.
No, I have strange thought experiments, but we're going to need to learn to cooperate more if we hope to, have the better outcomes, like you were describing earlier, of that sort of idealistic, that the distance between the best case and worst case scenarios that we were talking about ahead of the start. We need to develop a better understanding of how we can work together.
Well, what has been
and I think a lot of those lessons are there.
I was going to say.
Okay.
What has been like encouraging, I guess, in that regard, that you've seen, like in your groups and?
I think, just the fact of getting people together and not putting, like, you've got to be at this level, or you've got to have passed this screening or test or something. If you're not at that level, you can't contribute to the discussion. Is to me a silly distinction. I think uh, we're all bringing different things to the table. And I'm sure that, you're not going to bring the kindergartner into the place where they're making decisions in terms of, highly technical code change or something on a particular model. But at the common humanity level, where a lot of this stuff I think needs to actually be discussed a lot more. You need the different voices in the room. You need different understandings and things. Getting people who are highly technical and figure they are the creators of this technology to listen to all the rest of us may be a lot more challenging than like my little AI group.
Well, it is
that
the
I'm in,
start of it.
but,
It's the point between,
it
if
is a
A is
start.
no one talking and Z is the decisions being made by the greater will of the collective, then you're somewhere between A and Z with that group. You're moving in the right direction, and it is, no, I mean,
Yeah.
it is beautiful to hear. And I do think that stuff is really powerful. I've been doing a bit of reading on, I guess, approaches like that to future thinking, and even you could say to rebellion or cultural change. It's not maybe the way it is, a direct conversation and a direct attempt by the less powerful people, or the people with less cards at the moment, to run up to the in front of the ship and steer the wheel. You're not going to get in, and you don't understand. But actually, there's a different kind of power in having people build relationships and build communities, because ultimately the power is just the sum of collective will. And if people are knowing each other, caring about each other, and acting at scale, that's the majority, and that's they can build their own things. So.
Yeah, and I think that is one of the big drivers behind open
Yeah.
source software and stuff. And I think there's a lot of hope there. And I think that a lot of social movements, I mean, when you look at history, there have been a number of very successful um, cooperative efforts by large groups of people to change their culture. Um, you think of the nonviolent movements, Dr. Martin Luther King, Gandhi, things like that. It isn't that we don't know how. We there are lots of levers that people can use to influence society, government structures, things like that. We just have to have the will to use them.
Absolutely.
And make those connections you're talking about. I think that's the really hopeful scenario. And there are a lot of people talking about it. It's just a matter of finding, making those connections and finding the message, finding the right message. And that's where getting people past their fears and having a basic understanding enough that they can be part of that conversation and have their voice heard. I think that's where these little groups around can eventually that'll move its way up over time.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so how does all of this, I mean, we've talked about the politics and the technology and the psychology of how we individually and collectively manage this thing that's like us and more than us, and what is, I think it does reveal a lot and threatens us, yeah, and it tells us a lot about our own limits.
But also,
yeah,
and also brings us huge benefits, like some of the things that are being discovered in medicine.
Amazing.
And
yeah,
how the brain works. And I mean, it's just
Yes,
protein
I've read
folding
about the
and some of the
protein folding.
things.
It's insane.
It,
People spend hours,
yeah,
hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of hours trying to predict how a protein's going to fold, trying to design it. And someone came up with the right algorithm. It was this open competition, wasn't it? And hundreds and hundreds of protein folds are now
yeah,
well understood,
yeah,
which is just incredible. Like we actually understand the geometry
yeah.
that's happening of these proteins in our cells. It's amazing. That's world changing.
So it's us learning how to work with the technology. I mean, if you think back to a group of early humans trying to figure out what to do with fire. Let's say, there's a stick burning. How many times did they burn their hands and things trying to get a useful fire to have in the middle of the circle, have a campfire. I mean, I'm sure that was the height of technology at
Yeah.
that time, right? We're trying to do, we'll make mistakes. Uh, Hopefully they won't be catastrophic ones. And it's already brought us so much benefit
Yeah.
that we do, it's about how to channel that and make it work uh, more widely, more safely, more ethically.
Yeah, it's very unique in a few ways. You said, before I was talking about how, similar to what you just said, there were things, the world was something we couldn't understand. We've sort of made this world, this contained world of houses and technologies and systems that we do understand, and now we've made something within that we again don't understand. But something special about that, and speaking of like the protein folding and the advances in medicine and all of that, is whilst being that, it's also something that empowers us to understand, right? I mean, the level of complexity that
Yeah.
the natural world, just for example, medicine it was I mean, who knows now because we've got the technology, but arguably it was an unsolvable problem without AI. Some of those things, like arguably, we just didn't have the capacity to integrate all of this data to a cohesive understanding. Whether that's the activity of molecules in the cell, whether that's the way different biological variables interact out in the environment. And speaking of wildfires, I mean that's where you got into it, right? It gave you understanding you didn't have, and weather is another example. There's just a cap with the level of complexity of algorithms, whatever we can come up with, to understanding. So it's kind of it both presents the biggest black box yet, but it also kind of cracks open all the other ones. Or maybe that's a matter of how we use it. Speaking of that, I want to read this very interesting question Ryan wrote in the comments here. On that note, I have a very Ariel question for whenever it fits into the conversation. Do you think we could put a modified EEG device underground in a forest to detect bioelectrical data from the mycelium network, feed both that raw data and wildfire timing and location data into an AI system, and effectively train it to quickly detect wildfires?
That's a really interesting one. There's all sorts
Great question.
it's a big deal in wildfire detection right now with above ground sensors and tree mounted sensors. Uh, that's an interesting one.
What are they reading?
And a lot of it, well, it's particulate matter in the air. Some are audio.
Oh, yeah.
Some are visual. There's a lot of cameras now. There's a big network in Oregon and California where they've got these cameras to detect smoke, and then they're mounted on these towers, and then it feeds into the tech. It's got AI modules on it to analyze it, and then it sends the alert through a microwave system. So, and there's actually one of the groups at NAU here in Flagstaff is doing satellite-based monitoring. They can pick up fire starts the size of a
Nice.
campfire.
Wow.
Yeah, it's really high resolution, and they've had pretty good success in detecting it. Um, and then oh, there's a whole bunch of satellite stuff that is really fascinating. There's several different groups doing this sort of satellite detection, different types of satellite systems, but they're all working to some degree, and one is actually getting pretty close to commercially viable. So um, it's very rapidly advancing, and I think mycelium. I like the idea of the connecting network, but I think the visual is the thing that's probably going to win out because we've got such good, and there's thermal too. But
What actually, if the
I love the idea of
yeah, if it's
mycelium.
not, I mean, this is maybe a bit of an amateur question, but if it's not like lightning or a campfire, what starts a forest fire? Does a branch fall and rub on the tree on the way down? Like, what? Or is that one of the questions that you're trying to answer, like trying
It's
to catch it at the very beginning?
uh, we know a lot about how fires start. It's different in different areas of the country, but the top cause is human activity, and there's a variety of, hot catalytic converter on top of, too close to a fuel, or you're you're dragging a chain and sparks,
Right.
trailer chains, things like that are relatively common. But the biggest ones are campfires that are that get away, or people burning trash or leaves or something, and it gets
Right. So,
away
like,
from
as
them.
in just
Uh,
a
or
leaf on
lightning.
fire floats through the air and lands on a dry twig from someone's rubbish pile or something, and that's it.
Yeah, it's a flame source from somewhere, either human caused or
Right.
lightning, for the most part. You'll Once in a while there'll be something like a broken glass, and
Still human.
it
Okay, well, so I'm
concentrates the
curious about,
sunlight.
because forest fires
Yeah,
have always happened, right? I mean, there are certain types of trees that only release their seeds after there's been a forest fire. I mean, it's an ancient thing. So before humans, was the only cause lightning?
as far as I know,
Interesting. Oh, of
volcanic. You
course,
could have
yeah.
volcanic, but that was not as common. But yeah, it's and that one of the big reasons fires are so severe is that humans have affected the natural cycle of forest uh, burning and regeneration. Um, and tribal cultures, there's a really strong indigenous culture around fire that was basically lost or nearly lost, and it's now being revived, where Native Americans would burn off grassy areas and things like that, and uh, burn off accumulations of pine needles. But it was low temperature and frequent maintenance. Uh, the settlers coming in had no idea that what they were seeing was actually human managed to a degree. Um, and lightning fires, unless it's a severe drought, they tend to be more localized, um, more regular. They burn off the undergrowth and things like that, so fires aren't as severe. The trees don't grow as close together. Uh, but human intervention in the forest system has changed, even before you factor in the effects of climate change, um, has completely altered the severity of
So
fires.
sounds like to me another example of painting ourselves into a corner in a way, right? Where, we've
Yeah,
got the
yeah.
local,
We didn't
yeah,
understand.
we've got our limited things that we're focusing on, and we've got our local and short time scale understanding. Fire bad, don't like it. And then we're building
Mhm.
a room full of dry wood that's harder and harder and harder to stop fires. You say, what was your job title? Wildfire prevention specialist. What was the title?
Mitigation
Okay, good. Because
specialist.
my question was, is prevention, like, is that still treated as the given priority, as the thing, prevention, or is there an approach of appreciating the complexities of the system that aren't the immediately obvious thing that we don't like fire, and doing intentional burns? Is that something that happens?
That's something, prescribed burning has been something that's been growing as a fuel management technique. We got so good at suppressing fires in the 20th century that it was put fires out. And so the fuels built up and built up. And now we're having to go back and reduce fuels, especially
By
as
burning
you
it.
move, as people start moving it. Burning, sometimes it's tree thinning, taking
Yeah.
trees out where they've grown really thick. There's a whole variety of methods used to reduce fuels. But I think there's a growing recognition that it was a misunderstanding. We didn't understand how forests worked. And we got good with the technology of suppression and putting fires out, and very much painted ourselves into a corner. Now we're doing more prescribed burns, thinning. A lot of the Native American tribes have been reviving their cultural practices
amazing.
from long ago. And they are starting to partner with like the Forest Service or Cal Fire, some of the larger fire, I guess call it fire management organizations. They're still doing a lot of suppression, but more and more they're realizing that you've got to mitigate the risk. And there are ways to do that now that we didn't have before too. I mean, one of the fun things they're called dragon eggs. A large drone can carry this little cage of look like ping pong balls, and they're potassium permanganate. And I don't know.
Yeah, I'm good.
Can you still hear me? Oh, okay. So there's this attachment to the drone holding these, and there's a little thing, and it punctures the ball. It falls from a drone or a helicopter, and it scatters these, and they catch on fire, but they're very tiny little fires, and they spread it out over like,
Wow.
I've got something weird going on with my computer here.
It does look fine at my end.
Let me,
I can
you
hear you
me
fine.
okay? Oh, I'm getting an echo.
But I can hear you fine.
But I
can now hear myself. But I can also hear
Mhm.
myself now. But I can also hear myself now. All right, try
Oh.
just turning them on again.
Let me see if I can. My headphones picked up something. It
Okay.
stopped now.
Okay. Oh.
Okay.
No, it's because I can still hear myself. You're not in your headphones. No, it's because I can still hear. Now we're good. Yeah.
Sorry,
No, it's all
sorry
right.
for
It's
the
all right.
interruption here.
I think we're good.
I think it's fine now. I was picking up another signal when I was getting two voices. So it is a technological recreation of what indigenous practices were, which to small areas, low intensity burns on the ground, keep it from moving up into the trees where you get crown fires where they spread really rapidly. And so it's interesting, the technology and the indigenous practices are kind of converging on a much more beneficial solution. Now the question
is appreciation of complexity in some sense, isn't it? Right? Like, we'd taken this sort of, which isn't not inherently wrong, of course, but this, reductionist, measured, sort of linear understanding approach, and that was really boundaried. And as we've built more complex ways of understanding it, and maybe with the help of AI, which is better at that, interesting. And I feel like it's almost a trend at the moment and today, where the Western world at large has taken the scientific approach fantastic, and there's a lot of things that have been undermined, I suppose, because of this new lens of understanding, but that are now more recently being empowered, understood, reintegrated, because of the complexity that scientific linear understanding, and it's certainly, I imagine, could accelerate with the help of AI. The understanding that can now be brought to complex systems. It's to me that speaks to the power of our uniquely human but underutilized way of understanding things, which is collectively. It is through patience, it's through observation. It's I think we're really, really good at relating to things actually that are a lot more complex than ourselves, but we've sort of have this way that I think we can do that when we're not trying to control everything, but when we're trying to control everything, we get a bit blinded maybe. I also find it kind of ironic. I've enjoyed as we were traveling so I was traveling with my family and we went on the ferry between the two islands of New Zealand. It's a nice ride. It's about it's 2 movies long, the ride. And they played Brother Bear, which is this Disney American film, and it's in a way it's a romanticization and celebration of Native American culture. And I also watched Stallion or Spirit, Stallion of the West, which is a film about a horse in the US. It's the same thing. It's a celebration of that whole worldview. And it's interesting. I don't know. I think it's kind of ironic in a way that I think since we disconnected from a right brain working with the world kind of way of understanding things, we've romanticized it a lot whilst we've trodden on it. But it's nice to see some rejoining, and there is I don't think AI is playing much of a role here. We're not a very I don't find us to be a very future oriented country, but in New Zealand similar stuff is happening, and that so our indigenous people are called Maori, and they came here from the islands hundreds of years ago, and people from Europe and that arrived maybe 200 years ago, a little bit less. And there's a lot today in terms of environmental management, education, and health. And I was even seeing some of it in my psychology degree of incorporating, as the Western understanding of medicine is kind of caught up to that, to being able to, I guess, hold that amount of complexity. There's this now incorporation of Māori worldview into how we approach all of these things, and it's more relational. It's more kind of about working with rather than controlling. These are sort of some of the native thinking principles that come in. I guess there's an ideal future, right, where AI, instead of taking us fully down into the possible future of everything is machine and we all live in a digital hellscape, could actually, seems like it has the power to it can give us the power to understand really, really complex things, so that we can like with, I mean, I love that example. That was amazing with the pallets that get dropped from the plane. It's like we can use technology to do what people have been doing for a long time, but better, right? To approach things in a way that understands complexity. That would be nice. That's a cool idea.
Well, and there's room for both things to exist side by side. You can treat a large area with the pellets, but there's value in the cooperative relationships that are being set up between the indigenous tribes and, say, the Forest Service, where they're teaching, that they're having some of the elders come in and teach Forest Service personnel, and then they will go out and they will participate in a joint burn to get this cultural understanding to transfer and educate. So so there's a lot of really interesting things happening. You were talking about the Maori. Um, if I remember right, it was a few years back, but um, it was New Zealand and the Maori people were working to get a river declared as a personhood for the, and so there's that understanding actually coming into the legal system there. And I've been hearing about other countries that have started to, there are lawsuits and things to get certain endangered areas and rivers and different things declared to have rights in a way that, you know, if you just left Western culture to its own devices, probably wouldn't have even been considered. So there's some really interesting things going around about cultural exchange. And then when you add AI into the mix, um, there's all kinds of archaeological stuff being discovered uh, using drones, lidar cameras, technology, you know, revealing uh, ancient cities in jungle areas and stuff like that that's been happening. And then that data being analyzed by AI. There's a thing with like these really old scrolls that had been burned. I
Oh,
think it
I
was
saw that.
Pompeii.
That's insane. Yeah.
And
Amazing.
they took all those layers that they x-rayed it and they used AI to recreate, because the difference in how it burned on the, I'm assuming it was vellum, papyrus or vellum. I don't know what else
I think it was
might
papyrus.
have been made of, but where the ink was burned different, it left like a shadow kind of thing. And they were able to get all those little tiny layers and actually
Yeah. That's
transcribe
insane. I
that.
think I saw something
It was,
when they were trying it.
yeah,
I don't know. I didn't see the progress of it. But yeah, it was like a very, very tightly
yeah,
bound long roll of papyrus that had been burnt to
yeah,
just the whole thing was a black char. And to be able to restore that, I mean, that's amazing. That's
yeah. Just to retrieve that information under those conditions, and be able to make something intelligible. And they're also using AI. There's interest here. So Northern Arizona has a number of reservations, Native American reservations, and
yeah,
the Navajo or Dene people um, have a very large portion of northeastern Arizona. Um, and they've initiated a tribal. My understanding is, because this was a guy who came to a different workshop, and he was talking about how they're trying to uh, keep their language alive, and their stories, particularly their stories, and they're looking to uh, there's a whole bunch of ritual and cultural practice around when you can tell stories, what stories
okay,
you can tell them. So they're really afraid of that being lost. And so they're starting to do audio transcriptions and then analyze it and use AI in the whole process of turning that different formats, you know, get the person to tell the story, record them, and then turn that into not just audio but
oh, I see.
video and
Yeah, yeah.
transcriptions, and then have it in digital format to
Mm,
read. And so they're doing this whole massive archiving of their cultural heritage and starting to use AI all through the process, and then in the delivery of
mm,
the stories, and maintaining the archive. And it's just really interesting. He gave a description of what they're still fairly early in the project, but they envision this complete, or at least of everything that they can. And then they've actively been working on keeping their language alive. And now they're looking at, well, how can we use AI to further their efforts along this? So there's all sorts of interesting, cultural and scientific and artistic and
It's yeah, I mean, and that's great. And where we are now, before because who knows how things are going to change in terms of AI ownership and what it's going to start to be used for. But where we are now with all of these freely accessible tools, something that baffles me is how many things that were so hard to do, and you needed a lot of time and a lot of money and a lot of people, are so easy now. But one of the things to me that's baffling about that is, I guess it just speaks to that hard difficulty is very much a psychological thing, because it's so easy to build a website. If you have an idea for any kind of creative idea, for a game, for a book, for a song, for an artwork, or whatever, the speed at which you can just get from beginning to end, you can really speed up, and you don't have to find the person with the right knowledge. You can learn through the et cetera, et cetera. But I don't see a utter and profound change in how much people are getting done in terms of their, this is something I'd like to do, but it would be really hard. Oh, it's not hard now. It's not hard, but we're not doing it. It's kind of,
it gets rid of a lot of the
yeah,
excuses.
exactly. And you wonder what the real reason is. It's like, there's this idea, I think it was Benjamin Franklin, who fought really, really hard for public libraries in the US, and the idea there that was popular idea at the time is that information is the barrier, right? If people have information, they can do anything. It's a lack of information, and everyone's got the information now, but not everyone's making all the best decisions or getting everything. Okay, so it's not information. So maybe it's means, okay, or maybe it's maybe it's literal processing power and the ease at which that information comes across and the convenience, the amount of time, money, or people it takes to get things done. No, that's not it either. Okay. I mean, sometimes that's it, but yeah.
Yeah. Sometimes, but when you stop and think about it, the excuse me,
Okay.
the internet opened up this vast, I mean, it's mind-boggling, being someone who was around before the internet, what it makes available to all of us who have internet access. I think we in who are privileged to have this kind of access that we have, because it is not equally distributed. It we can bring up information about just about anything. Going back to the car analogy, I've actually figured out how to do things on my own vehicle from YouTube videos.
Same.
It puts that into people's hands now. But there was so much information and how to find it and how to utilize it. AI has opened, it's a hugely important learning tool if we learn how to introduce that, especially to kids, so they learn how to use it wisely. But for all of us to have this tool where we can, now it isn't just finding the information, you can distill it, it'll cite where to go for the original papers. You can draw multiple things together and create a whole curriculum for yourself. And then if you use something like Notebook LM, it can create you a study guide, an audio file to listen to, even a podcast where it's two people discussing the topic in depth that you want to learn about. And you've got this in a matter of a few moments, pretty much. And you've got this complete curriculum, study guide, all the sources. It's mind-boggling. It really is. It's really up to us to use it and to use it wisely. So we're back to our own humanity and how do you navigate this individually, collectively, amongst your circle of people in a way that empowers you, and you don't just end up, oh yeah, scrolling on your phone.
It kind of makes me think of
So
this, and now this image just came to my mind. Like, yeah, it does. I mean, it almost turns the lens right back on us. Again,
yeah,
you
yeah,
know,
it does.
the okay, so the level of power and possibility and knowledge and ease. So the only question is what's going on within us and between us that's going to determine what we choose to do, because there's much less that's boundarying what we can do, right? It's sort of, I had this image of like a little hamster running in a wheel, and that's us, getting faster and faster with change and technology, and it's running faster and faster and faster and faster and faster, trying to get somewhere, trying to get to the next thing, trying to escape, trying to get more control, more power. And once you're going really, really fast, I don't know, maybe there's a mirror or something on the little wall there, the hamster just looks and sees itself in the mirror. It's like, oh, I'm just here and I'm just running, and it sees itself, and it's kind of, it's at some point
Yeah,
you got to look look in the other direction, where when you move this, we've moved in this direction of ease, convenience, power, knowledge, and so far and so fast, and the rate of change is so immense now, um, that it's no longer, it was long ago that was the bottleneck, I guess, that boundary, the direction that we're
yeah,
taking, and so we got to look
didn't
in the
have
other way.
access.
And now I'm thinking of Ryan, who I assume is still listening live, with his that's kind of his whole
Yeah,
mantra in a way, with all he's trying to do, right, with Mindform and everything else,
yeah,
is okay. Well, the issue is wisdom, so let's address that problem.
yeah, yeah. Because it ultimately it comes back to we're creating this thing as as humanity. How do we choose to use it as a whole? But that eventually you still got to come back around and look at yourself and go, what, that whole idea of how do I keep up is really isn't a
Right.
useful way to think. You've got to, this is going to echo our last conversation and how we closed out the last one, because you have to know what you want. What do you want to learn?
Mm-hmm.
And you can go out and learn it. And then how are you going to apply it? And how are you going to make sure other people have that same opportunity as well?
Yeah.
So you have to look in yourself and go, what matters to me? What are my values? And where's my curiosity taking me? So my curiosity is taking me into AI. Some people may not be that curious about it. It's going to impact their lives in various ways. But if you follow your curiosity and what you know about yourself and follow that journey, you're going to find out more. You're
Mm.
probably going to have some surprises along the way. But that connection, the ability to kind of harvest that knowledge and have it in more and more usable, actionable forms that AI opens up,
Mm.
um, it comes back to what you want to do, and then how are you going to help empower those around you to do the same thing? Help them find their motivation and curiosity, and use it for good.
Yeah, it's almost urgent. Well, it is, right? It's like,
Yeah.
I mean, I guess it's I'm saying the hamster wheel thing again, but we there've been constraints, I guess, on the impacts of our decisions, or the power to do something with what we have, and in a and we were adapted to those constraints, and we're adapted to the world that that was before the internet and before AI, and now that through the internet, through AI, we live in a totally unfamiliar environment, and our capacity to learn and our capacity to do is so incredibly enhanced. It's like really, really urgent that we figure our stuff out. It's because the world's not putting us in check in the same way, right? and so we kind of we need to make sure that that we're in a place where we are empowered to do the thing that we actually value, the thing that we actually want to do, that we're learning the right information. It's that's where we need to put our consciousness at.
Yeah, I think that the thing to keep in mind is the barriers are the lowest they've ever been for knowledge and
Yeah.
learning and for connecting with other
But
people
the highest they ever will be,
and for
potentially.
methods.
Yeah, maybe not.
Well, I think, well, I mean, look at the power. If you look at the world in general and you look at how many people have cell phones now who can interact with services and the internet, all sorts of different services that they could do access before, even people in very remote areas. So yes, there are gaps in coverage and the access, but it's dropped a lot from what it was. And those of us who have extraordinary amounts of access, I'm in a group, actually it's an AI group out of New Zealand, who have, and it's a worldwide community of people learning how to use AI. And the specific focus is on how to build businesses and empower businesses through using AI. There are people from all over the world in that group, and they're actively learning and growing. And so it's, yeah, there's constraints, yeah, there's chaos and uncertainty and things that we're afraid of, but we've got far more agency, I think, than we often give ourselves credit for.
Agreed. Well, it's almost part of the urgency is
Yeah.
just to realize that agency, right? To see it. Yeah.
Yeah. And then to take it seriously and not let ourselves allow the convenience or the proximity, this thing that we carry around with us can be a great friend and also a terrible enemy, depending on how we use it, how we train our attention, or what we choose to do with our time, because that's really we haven't found a way around that constraint.
Yeah. Well, I think a lot of people take the approach of trying to manufacture constraints, right, into their environment because we're used to it. We're just not used to.
It
Yeah,
feels
it feels safer, and
safer.
you're
We're just,
externalizing
yeah,
some of that. I mean, it is I think it's a responsibility and burden we're in many ways unprepared for. Certainly as individuals and as collective, we're unprepared for how easy it
yeah,
is and how
true.
accessible it is, and so I think it's understandable. I mean, yeah, I think I agree with your sentiment that the solution is to look inward and follow your creativity. I think that in a lot of ways is sort of the highest calling. Just express your values and all that. But
And it takes a certain
it's a
amount
very
of
brave thing to do. Yeah.
trust in yourself and trust in others, because it isn't, we can project out on others our own, inner failings and things too, and not recognize that maybe we're keeping ourselves small often because of, like what you're saying, it's more comfortable or it feels safer to have it. As long as we're in the box, we feel in control in a way. But to really connect to other people or to grow ourselves, you just about have to step outside of that. You got to take some risks to do that. So yeah, we are kind of ending up pretty much the same spot we
Yeah.
did last time, huh? On some
Yeah,
level.
definitely.
Yeah, a little different. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, yeah, I think sometimes well, I've said this to people before and they don't understand it, so I'll say it in a different way. I have this kind of, well, we all have this sense of the world that we want to be in, heaven, paradise, the place where things are good, and then you can just live your life and enjoy it. And we feel like what we're always doing now is kind of trying to get there, right? We're trying to prep the way, and that's the mode of operating we're used to. And sometimes I find it, and it's true in a unique way now with AI, but sometimes I find it intimidating but empowering to consider the possibility that, actually, the world I'm in now is that world that I would really, really love to be in. The world where I can just do anything, and I can follow my heart, and I can just connect with people and enjoy life, and I don't have to be working and building and prepping and anxiously. But I think actually that's really scary, because we're used to a limited, I guess, finite pie kind of mindset. We're used to, well, that's what we know. We know a life of things are hard, and I have to do things this way, and it is what it is. We know how to operate in that world, and that kind of freedom is scary, and just that it's not familiar. It's just not familiar, I think, how capable we are. And I wonder the impacts of that mismatch. But I suppose it's also kind of just a freeing thought. Oh, maybe just stop pretending it's really hard. It's not. Go for it.
Yeah, I mean, it's about the stories we tell
Yeah.
ourselves and each other.
Yeah. Okay. I think that is a good place to end off our call, Ariel. So, yeah,
been a
thank you so
pleasure.
much for coming on.
Always enjoy
Yeah,
our
actually, I did want to ask, before you go, I do your AI group, and I know you do trainings and stuff. Do you want to, I mean, I could just put it in the description for the video, or do you want to tell people where they can go to get involved, to find a group like that, or get involved in conversations like that?
It's funny. It came out of the class I taught, and we've kept it entirely in person. We don't do it online. So, because I found out I tried to do another class and do it online, and the quality of interaction and learning was just not as good. So, and I'm not in touch with, well, you know what, maybe what I can do is I'm working on a website with resources.
Oh, great.
Online resources. Maybe I get that finished up and then give you a link, because that would have more information about things that people who aren't in Flagstaff, Arizona, would have access to. It's actually a conscious choice we've decided as a group to keep it live interaction.
Okay, that's a great idea.
And yeah, so I don't know how many other groups really are out there that are maybe like us. That, I mean, it's taken me 6 months to even start doing a website, because we were so busy just doing our in-person meetings. That's just kind of odd, but maybe that's kind of where we're going to, is to balance out all of this constantly online stuff, even on a technical topic, to emphasize the human side, the human connection side. So I'll talk to you, and we can figure out, get some resources for people that want to learn more about AI.
And what was your Substack called again, if people want to read some of what you're writing?
Navigating the AI future. I still only have one post.
That's funny. Okay. Well, now you're gonna have to make more. I don't have
publishing.
either. Fun.
I know. I just one of my limitations here that I need nudged on.
Awesome. All right. Cheers, Ariel. Thank you so much for coming on. It's really nice talking to you again.
Thanks, Frank.
Bye-bye.
It was fun. Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to the Mindform Podcast. I'm Ryan A. Bush, founder and author of Designing the Mind and creator of Mindform. Mindform is an exclusive community and training platform for sculpting your psychological software. Members get access to a group of like-minded psychotechs, including all of our guests on this podcast, gamified growth tools, events and retreats, and a collection of transformative programs for mental health and self-mastery. You can learn more and apply to join at mindform.io/podcast. I hope to see you inside.